Remember that time Clayton's sister traveled all the way to the jungle pretending to be a photographer and almost killed Tarzan and his friends? Hi, I'm Dr. Panda, the only panda who took part in the musical number Trashin' the Camp. And in this video, we're gonna talk about one of the best episodes of the Tarzan animated series, episode 34, titled Gauntlet of Vengeance, which left a mark on me ever since I first saw it back in 2001, and you'll see why in a sec. Let's get started. The episode opens with an image that might look like nothing special, a painting of Captain Ahab in his hunt for Moby Dick, but this will be important later. The painting hangs on the wall of a tavern, where a mysterious hooded woman is asking an innocent old man for info about Tarzan. The old man reasonably asks for payment in exchange for his knowledge, and the woman makes it clear she'll pay whatever it takes to find the ape man. The elder tells her all about him, finishing with a warning. Tarzan should never be underestimated. But the woman reveals her face for the first time, and replies that it's Tarzan who shouldn't underestimate her. After the intro, we see Tarzan and Jane building a table when they get interrupted by Professor Porter, who's been endlessly chasing a mosquito. Jane points out he's been at it for hours, and that the little bug is turning into his very own white whale. Tarzan gets confused since that mosquito clearly doesn't look like a whale, so Jane explains the story of Moby Dick and Captain Ahab's compulsion to hunt down the fierce white whale. And in this moment, the theme for the whole episode has been set: the obsession with revenge. Jane even goes to the point of mentioning that in the book, it's that same obsession and hatred that ultimately cost Ahab his life. Is this foreshadowing for the episode's ending? We'll see. Cut to the mysterious woman who's now with Dumont. If you don't remember or haven't watched my video about why the Legend of Tarzan isn't on Disney+, Renard Dumont is the owner of a trading post near Tarzan's jungle and an opportunist who usually sides with whoever's got the most money. And as we saw earlier, this woman has plenty of it. The woman tells Dumont that she'll need a guide for the safari trip she wants to take, and she specifically wants Tarzan to be that guide. When Dumont points out that Tarzan won't help her shoot animals, she pulls out a camera, revealing her innocent intentions. Tarzan shows up in front of the woman, but before they can be formally introduced, there's a little accident with some barrels, so Tarzan decides it's the perfect moment to show off his incredible acrobatic skills. The woman, who Dumont introduces as Miss Waltham, manages to convince Tarzan to be her guide, and so begins a peaceful little photo adventure through some of the most beautiful landscapes in the jungle. During one of their stops, Miss Waltham mentions that now she understands why her brother loved Africa so much, and then makes a face like she just caught a whiff of something she definitely didn't want to. Meanwhile, Professor Porter is admiring his brand new collection of test tubes and minding his own business, when he suddenly gets kidnapped by Miss Waltham's butler? Bodyguard? Dad? Tantor bathes by the waterfalls when a delicious flying peanut shows up, luring him straight into a trap. And things aren't looking much better for Turkey either. If you're good at math, you know that means there's only one left. Jane is painting in the treehouse when the door suddenly swings open and the man in the suit shows up with a scary look on his face. Miss Waltham takes photos with Tarzan when she suddenly starts going off with weird talk about the brutal laws of the jungle, revenge, and the phrase, an eye for an eye. Then, as if nothing happened, she says it's tea time and suggests they go join the others for a cup, leaving Tarzan thinking about how strange British people are. But when they return to the treehouse, Tarzan realizes Jane is missing. Miss Waltham gives an evil smile and says Jane is in grave danger, and that she's the one responsible. The woman goes on to say that not only did they kidnap Jane, but also the professor and Tarzan's animal friends. When Tarzan asks why, she repeats the same phrase as before, an eye for an eye. Miss Waltham shouts at Tarzan that he killed someone who was very close to her. She pulls out a picture of Clayton, and Tarzan flashes back to the climactic scene of the movie where Clayton meets his end. Although, interestingly, it's not actually the movie scene itself, but a recreation done in the show's lower-budget animation style. And I think I know why. Here's the original scene. And here's the show's recreation. Besides the obvious budget downgrade, there's just one major difference. Yeah, I think Disney figured they could skip the part with the shadow of the corpse hanging from a vine. Tarzan asks if Miss Waltham knew Clayton, and she snaps back furiously that he was her brother. Tarzan tries to explain that he didn't kill him and that it was all just an accident, but Waltham doesn't want to hear any excuses, and she explains that her only comfort after her brother's death was planning her revenge. Waltham reveals that every member of Tarzan's family is now trapped somewhere in the jungle, and if he hurries, he might be able to save most of them. A plan that sounds a lot like something a certain clown from a certain Gotham City would come up with. But before Tarzan can leave, she shoots him with a poison dart and tells him the antidote is on a mountain she's named Clayton's Peak. So now Tarzan has a choice to make: save himself or save his family. Yeah, she's even more evil than the Joker. And with that, Tarzan sets off to rescue his family. He hears Turk's screams calling him to his first stop, where the gorilla is about to be devoured by a snake. Tarzan swoops in to save her, but before she can even thank him, Tarzan is already gone. Tantor finds himself trapped in a net over a river full of crocodiles, and it doesn't look like it's gonna hold for long. Look at that little bum. But just as the branch is about to snap, Tarzan appears to save him. The ape man sets off to rescue the others, but the poison starts taking effect. Still, he tries to ignore it and keeps going on his mission. Waltham watches from a distance, impressed by Tarzan's endurance and perseverance. Her buddy remarks that he's a fascinating man, but this triggers Waltham, who screams that he's not a man, but a savage monster, and he should never forget it because Clayton forgot and paid the price. Professor Porter is tied up under a rock that is only held by a fragile rope, which in turn is being burned with a magnifying glass, because I guess Waltham was a huge fan of the Looney Tunes. Tarzan appears but is severely weakened by the effects of the poison. Waltham points out that he has little time left, and although he tries to convince her to stop all this, she refuses with a smile. The rope holding the rock snaps, but Tarzan manages to save the professor despite his weakness. In the meantime, Jane is locked in a cave with the water level rising steadily. Tarzan hears her screams and manages to find her, but he has little energy left. The water level rises, submerging Jane. Waltham appears, because I guess besides being super rich, she can also teleport, and tells Tarzan that he must decide whether to save himself by searching for the antidote or save Jane. Tough choice, she says, but then Tarzan responds,
"No choice at all."
Tarzan tries to break the lock on the cage without success, until he finds a rock and manages to free his beloved. He saves Jane, but he looks sadly into the distance toward Clayton's Peak. This is the end. Except that Tarzan never gives up without a fight, so he decides to try to go for the antidote. Waltham watches him from a distance and reveals to us that the antidote is actually with her. Which makes me wonder, if she wanted to kill Tarzan, why even bring the antidote in the first place? But before the scene cuts, we see how some antidote hunting panthers attack her. Tarzan hears the roars and saves her just in time, showing that he is not the savage monster she thought he was. Tarzan defeats the panthers after a tough fight, but then he collapses. Waltham is moved, so she gives him the antidote and then flees when Jane shouts at her to get away from him. Tarzan wakes up in the treehouse fully recovered, and Jane explains that someone gave him the antidote just in time. Yep, Miss Waltham is just standing there next to them awkwardly after nearly getting them all killed. The woman apologizes and says that she now understands that Tarzan couldn't have killed Clayton, and that it was her hatred that blinded her and prevented her from seeing it before. Tarzan forgives her, and now they're magically best friends. Roll credits. Before I tell you what I think about this episode, I'd love for you to leave your thoughts in the comments so we can exchange opinions. Ready? Great. This is one of my favorite episodes of the series, and it left a mark on me for several reasons. First and foremost, the big reveal of Miss Waltham's identity. The episode came out in 2001, and when I first saw it back then, I had no context for what I was about to see. I only knew she was a suspicious woman and probably a villain, but it never crossed my mind that she could be related to Clayton, so when she revealed it to Tarzan, my childhood self almost fainted. It was possibly the first plot twist of my life, and it impacted me so much that I still remember it to this day. Another thing I love about the episode is that it shows us Tarzan at his most vulnerable, which wasn't very common in the series. I mean, in this episode, Tarzan is completely weakened by the poison, so every time he saves one of his friends, it doesn't feel like a total victory, because we know the poison is still working, and time is running out for him. He's usually a guy who can do anything and who few things can harm, so the fact that he's on the brink of death makes Miss Waltham feel like a real threat. And although Tarzan's reconciliation with Miss Waltham is a little awkward, I like that she learned her lesson and had a change of heart at the end. Also, I appreciate that the episode has a clear theme established from the beginning with the painting in the tavern, Professor Porter and the mosquito, and with Jane telling Tarzan the story of Captain Ahab and Moby Dick, something that is explored in depth with the character of Miss Waltham and her desire to avenge her brother at all costs. That's great writing for me. And obviously, the fact that it has such a direct connection to the movie makes this episode feel very special. So yes, it's still as good as I remembered. And speaking of remembering, remember this series? Man, it was so good. And did you know it has a forbidden episode? I made a video revisiting the show and talking about that topic, and you can check it out right here. Subscribe for more. Dr. Panda out.